Let's move on and talk to Scott in California. Scott, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Love it.
Doing well. What do you want to talk about today?
Biggest fans.
Wow. All right.
Talking about pantheism again, naturalistic pantheism.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It can explain everything that supernatural gods can explain, only better. And that's kind of where I'm coming at it from. The reason that I bring that up is because I speak to theists all the time. You know, I debate with theists, and I'm not really a theist, but I am a pantheist, and that can be a little confusing, semantical for some people. Creates a little problem, but I find I can kind of convey a message better using certain labels and certain words.
I agree. That's why the label atheist isn't for everybody. You know, some people refer to themselves as humanists or secularists. That's understandable. I would like to jump in here before we get too deep into anything and ask how your version, because I heard you put naturalistic pantheist before just now, and I used to call myself that as well. And I'm curious what you see the naturalistic doing there. How does that differentiate you from what other people might assume pantheism is?
Right, because a lot of people may assume some supernatural pantheism or something like that, or a conscious universe or something like that. For me, I don't think it's necessary for the universe to be conscious. I don't think it's necessary to, promote all these unnecessary properties to the universe. But when I say naturalistic pantheism, what I'm saying is that all these mysteries that we usually ascribe to God or supernaturalism, like consciousness, like origins, like other things, these can all be explained by natural processes. Every single mystery of the universe has been explained by some natural process. Every single one of them.
Interesting. So that's where we would probably branch off, because I would agree with you that probably every single thing that anybody has experienced in terms of anything that they claim to be supernatural has a natural explanation. I wouldn't go so far as to say they've all been proven already. I think that there's a whole realm of stuff that we don't have access to yet that science hopefully eventually will get to, but hasn't yet. So that's an interesting claim, and I'm curious how you came to the conclusion that everything, it sounds like you're saying that everything is already proven.
No. Everything that has been explained in science has
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So we're on the,
we agree.
Scott.
Supernatural.
Scott, if you were to go over all of your views with me, would I define you as an atheist?
Probably. Most likely, yeah.
Okay. So here's a question. Somebody is watching the show. Right now, there are about 1,600 people watching the show. And they listen to you and they listen to me and they go, you know what? I really, really like that explanation that Scott gave. I'm not an atheist. I'm a pantheist.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be good?
That's a really good question, because let me put it to you this way. I'm part of a group on Facebook, for example, and there's a YouTube channel, Empathetic Atheist, and I debated a Christian last night, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I saw that.
However,
I didn't watch the whole thing, but I dropped in.
Yeah. You might check me out. I was debating Matt last night. But anyways, I kind of was talking about, when I was kind of framing my position and stuff like that, even before the show was aired, I said atheist. And then we got into the whole pantheist thing, and then everybody was saying, well, it seems like atheist is kind of a useless term for what you are with everything else that you're trying to talk about. It seems like pantheist suffices. But then there's other people that would say the opposite. The
exact opposite, yeah. And you're talking to two people who think it's the exact opposite, because the atheist point is so small. Mm-hmm. It allows for us to be able to fit everything else in, that needs to. So that's when we can start talking about secular humanism. That's when we can start talking about skepticism, empiricism, naturalism, right? All of those things, when we give those definitions instead of trying to lump them all together into something more nebulous is, number one, we give people a better place to be able to investigate for themselves. And number two, we make sure that we're not creating places for nut jobs to take advantage of that.
True, but here's the opportunity in either one of those labels, by the way. They can be good conversation starters, and they can be good engagement opportunities. For example,
agreed. That's why we do the show.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even need to give an example. We just agree with you on that out the door.
So it sounds to me like you might have called yourself an atheist before you realized that if you marketed yourself as a naturalistic pantheist, you could have conversations you wanted to have better or more easily.
Yep, that's pretty much, and it depends, though. I would say depends on who I'm speaking to, but if I'm really honest in my experience, I would say that most Christians I speak to, I have better conversations marketing myself as a naturalistic pantheist.
Right, because of the smear campaign that has been run against atheists. And here's, I think, the only point where I think we disagree. Because honestly, if you are someone who accepts science and thinks that there are natural explanations for supernatural events, then we are 99% in agreement there. I am happy to stand alongside you in allyship for whatever. My only thing to maybe think on a little bit is, yes, I have no doubt that labeling yourself a naturalistic pantheist makes conversations with theists easier. And honestly, there's probably a very useful space for that, right? If you're going to enter in, it's kind of like a Trojan horse, right? It's like enter into these conversations in a way that doesn't already have their walls up. You might be able to make points that somebody who's calling themselves an atheist couldn't make with the same effect. So I see a place for that. My only concern here is that personally, I call myself an atheist, and I face that stigma precisely because of the stigma, right? And precisely because so many people have this negative stereotype. I don't want to run away from that. I want to run into that head on and prove them wrong by being a humanist, by being a caring, loving person who appreciates ritual and nature and all of these things that they would consider to be their purview, right? So that's my choice. Right. I can't make that choice for anyone else. But as you're considering what you're calling yourself, that might be worth thinking about.
Yep. The funny thing is I agree with you 100% on that. And in some cases, I see it necessary to just leave pantheism alone and let's just talk about atheism. Sometimes if a Christian or some theist will not shut you down and wants to challenge you as an atheist because they have some argument, then I'll go with it. Because one thing that I don't like is that there's all these misunderstandings about what atheism actually means and what it actually entails. And so it's a good opportunity to fight the good fight for the label. It's just that with pantheism, if the goal is to get people to think more critically and to think more science, to give more credence to science and against supernaturalism, and these folks are, atheism is just the word that scares them to death for whatever reason, I'll invoke pantheism, naturalistic pantheism, to get in the door. And I've had so much success with that I can't really deny it. But at the same time, your point.
So let's do this. Let's do this.
Atheism, though.
Yeah, let's do this. There are lots of people who've called in that we've talked to who have that same kind of viewpoint, who are Satanists, who are Pastafarians, who have, and lots of versions therein.
Yeah. There are even secular Christians and Jews and Muslims as well. Yeah. So
the important thing here is I understand that there's a need for it. Being on the show that we're on, obviously, I think it's clear my argument is on this side. I understand. I think that if we ever get to a point where we can get the world to where we're just arguing and nitpicking definitions like that, let's build that world together.
Absolutely. I would just say one other thing, though, and this is a little bit of a caveat to what I said earlier. The previous caller also called themselves a pantheist and believed in it seemed like some really weird woo. And they felt justified more so because they heard that another pantheist was on the line and they would set us straight. And so completely against your own, this isn't your fault, but because you use that term, they felt more comfortable in promoting their version of pantheism, which is and can be harmful. So in a nutshell, I think that is the only place where we have a little bit of a disagreement. But other than that, in terms of worldview, I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, I think with the last caller, it kind of fell into something that's kind of normal. Is there's a composition division fallacy that's really easy to make. Whereas I understand what, I think what the guy was trying to say was proto-consciousness panpsychism is a legit scientific hypothesis. And then it's kind of easy to derive from that, therefore, when we die, we live on, or our cells are conscious that make us up. And then you run into this problem of, well, when I die, I become unconscious because I'm dead. My brain no longer works. But then I'm made up of these cells that are conscious. So I seem to run into a contradiction. But that's just because of the framing of what he was saying. It was kind of like a composition division fallacy. Yeah. Whereas we are made up of cells that can be argued to be conscious little entities. We are not ourselves. We are like a combination. We're an emergent property of all those cells, brain cells, and everything else that we're conscious of. So we depend on the natural world. We depend on our cells. We depend on our genetics. None of those are the self, because we have to define what the self is. So we run into a composition division fallacy.
Dude, we could have this conversation over a beer like anytime. I'd be happy to. I think. I think we're pretty much on the same page there. I would say as you continue to have these conversations, it sounds like you're getting out there and having debates and interacting with people. That's awesome. Do some thinking about exactly what the implication is of using one word or another, which I'm sure you already are. But other than that, thanks for calling in.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I've got this mental image. Here's my challenge, because we're going to hop in the Discord afterward. We've got more calls, but I'd love to have, what is the meme? Somebody holding a brick. Is this a house?
Oh, yeah, essentially that's what that is.